Hello, I'm Simon Fanshawe. I run a company called Diversity by Design. We work with the NFCC, we work with a number of fire services, which I think is why I'm invited here to AFSA. And I was presenting really on practical things that you can do to get real traction across the whole of your service in relation to diversity and inclusion. And I typically these days tend not to use the acronyms. I think they've really got quite a bad reputation now. So I typically would talk about increasing diversity and inclusion in order to enhance opportunities and fairness. I typically, when I think about diversity and inclusion, I typically divide it into two subdivisions really. I talk about diversity deficits and diversity dividends. I do that because there's a reality to the barriers to certain groups of people's talent. But you have to be really careful and accurate about how you understand and analyse those barriers, because all barriers that are between different groups, ethnic groups, are not necessarily as a result of race. All disparities between men and women are not necessarily about sex. They might be. And I'm not saying don't investigate that. I'm saying really investigate so you really understand what the problem is and the causes of it are, because then you can actually solve it. Allied to that is this question of deficits. So here, what do? You prevent fires, you enforce regulation, and you respond. So the central question, I would say, is to get the dividend, you have to understand why and what kind of combination of difference, diversity, would help you to do those three things. So it's got to be about the core purpose. Diversity is not a thing on its own. It's a way you do things. It's an approach to talent and talent development. I think one of the problems with this question of EDI as opposed to diversity and inclusion is that EDI has become divisive. And I think the reason it's become divisive in lots of places is that it's an attempt to impose around a kind of binary division. Now, the problem, of course, is that organisations are not immune to the forces in society, and politics and social discussions have become very binary. It used to be, I think I'm right and I think you're wrong. The old phrase, agree to disagree. Now it's, I think I'm right and I think you're a Nazi. You know, it's become that very binary way of thinking about politics, the right side of history, right and wrong, good or bad. I'm not sure that helps us as human beings to have dialogue, to talk to each other, and therefore learn from each other, and therefore stop what didn't work well from happening again. Because that's ultimately what we want to do. We want to improve working situations so people can really develop. The key thing for leaders to win trust, well, you're winning trust with two groups of people, aren't you? You're winning trust with your colleagues and staff, and you're winning trust with the public. I think honesty, absolute straightforwardness. I mean, I love it when, for instance, in politics, a politician says, do you know, we got that wrong. We got that wrong. Not the others got it wrong. We got it wrong. And we need to change direction because it didn't work. That's a really powerful thing to do. There's a very famous example of when the Fukushima nuclear reactor was going to melt down. And there was a guy there, he's become very famous now. He was the senior engineer. He worked on the other reactor. And what they realised was they had a plan. He went in, he brought all the technicians in, they had a whiteboard, everybody contributed their ideas. They made a plan together. After 24 hours and no sleep, they realised they were doing the wrong thing. But because everybody had been involved, there was no blame, there was no way in which, oh, that was wrong. They then simply pivoted, worked on the other reactor, it didn't melt down, thousands of lives were saved. It's that ability to be honest and straightforward with people, and they want to know that you're doing it not for themselves, not for you, but for the common goal, to achieve the goal you're in business to do. Well, I think they're very important because they're a way of certain groups of people, and it's really mixed, which I think is interesting here. So it's a group of people who are able to send a message to the leaders of their organisations, and also the other thing that they do, of course, you endlessly learn. I mean, I made loads of notes in the first three presentations that I listened to this morning. So I think it's a conversation piece, it's a learning, it's an opportunity to learn, but it's also an opportunity to start to think, what are the messages and how do I make them effective if I'm going to send them up in my organisation?